Hi, congrats on choosing or getting placed into the Biomed pathway. I'm Mame. I'm a senior going to college in the fall, but I can tell you about my experiences in Biomed last year before COVID hit. So I want to discuss with you what the realities of the course are. So I took Principles of Biomed in 11th grade and then Human Body Systems in 12th grade. The first one was completely in person, the second one was completely virtual. Okay, so when I got my course schedule in the beginning of 11th grade, I was most excited for biomed because I'm going to college to become a neuroscience major because I want to go into the medical field. So I wanted a class like that just to get the first look as to what it would be like. When I researched it before I started the class, I saw that it had a lot to do with hands-on projects, working together, research in general. So I was really excited for that. So when we started the class, I had Mr. Pufal. We started with this person called Anna Maria, and it was like we were medical detectives. So Anna Maria died, and we had to figure out what happened to her. Was it murder? Was it something medical that caused her to die? Like what was it? So we the year was broken up into different units, and we would learn about a certain type of medical term or something like that. And at the end of the year, we would decide, based off what we had learned from all those units, what was it that caused it. So one of the units was DNA, one was diabetes, one was heart disease, things like that. And then we would use those clues at the end of the year to decide this is what caused it. So that was actually really, really fun for me because the class, it's not so much you sit there and the teacher lectures and you write notes and you walk out like a lot of other classes that I've taken. This class was very hands-on. So Pufal would talk for maybe 5-10 minutes at the beginning of the class just to tell us this is what you're doing. And then the rest of the class, those last 30-35 minutes, was up to us to figure out what we had to do. So we used the Project Lead the Way website, the pathway, and it would tell us this is what you need to learn for this topic. So if it was DNA, we would learn about nucleotides and the nitrogenous bases and things like that. And then we had to build something most of the time. So for DNA, we built a diagram, like a long diagram of the different parts of DNA and how it forms a double helix standing up on the table. So there were a lot of projects like that. Like one of my favorites is probably the diabetes one, where we had to create like a shoebox diagram of what diabetes looks like and negative feedback and how when your blood sugar goes up, your body's trying to make it go back down. So the pancreas releases insulin and then it goes into your bloodstream and unlocks the cell so sugar can get in and break down. Like that whole thing, we had to build that. And it sounds difficult at first, but it's not that difficult if you're working with somebody else because two heads are always better than one. So those are probably my favorite part of the classes just because it's really fun to just get to build something and be able to stand there and have that hands-on experience of being able to do it yourself and not relying on the teacher for every single thing and not having to sit there for a lecture. It's fun to go to a class where you just get to just be creative. I didn't have a bad experience in biomed. Probably my least favorite was in the very beginning, in like September, October, when we started Anna Maria. We had to like draw an outline of the crime scene, and I can't draw at all. So I was scared that I was gonna get like a 75-80 because I'd drawn a stick figure. So I had to FaceTime my friends and say, can y'all help me draw this? Because the way that I'm doing it, the scale is not measuring up and all that. So we had to go like on FaceTime like 11 o'clock and draw while I was freaking out. But I finally did it and I got 100. So thank you, Mr. Fall. But that was probably the worst experience I had. It was my favorite class actually. I was actually looking into majoring in biomedical science, but schools don't really have that. But I think that was such a great experience for me, especially wanting to go into the medical field. It's a class that just lets you just be creative, like I said before, because Mr. Pufal's job, or whoever your teacher is for biomed, their job is not to stand there and hold your hand, which is like how college is going to be with labs. This is what you have to do. Here's a sheet, read through the instructions and figure it out yourself. If you need help, ask your friends before you ask me. So it forces you to think independently. It forces you to rely on somebody else besides your teacher, and it makes you think more. Yeah, because I always relied on teachers and I always made sure to ask, hey, am I doing this right? And he would just be like, figure it out. And it frustrated me, but at the end, I figured out why he kept doing that. Like, it makes you think for yourself. And that's probably one of my favorite facets of the class. So the last two things that I'm going to talk about are how to prepare for the class and what you're going to use out of it later on. So how to prepare for the class, you don't really need to like learn a lot of stuff beforehand because a lot of the stuff that you learn in biomed, you're going to learn in later classes. Like all those body parts and body systems I learned in biomed, I use in AP Bio the year after. So it's not like you need to know everything beforehand. But I would say let go of that mindset that the teacher's always supposed to help you, because this is a class where you use yourself and your friends as your biggest guides. As somebody who wants to go into the medical field, a lot of stuff that I learned in this class I can use later on in fellow classes like AP Bio or in college. So as someone who's going to college and majoring in STEM, in the STEM field, I know that I'm going to be taking a lot of labs. I'm going to be in science labs doing a lot of research and experiments and things like that. So working with like the project lead, the way things like learning how to use a microscope, learning how to use slides, things like that, those are going to help me later on, because it's that those basic foundations of science that I just never knew how to do, especially never had the equipment for it. Now I learned how to do that with biomed, so I'm using that in college, and it's going to make transitioning just a little bit easier. But probably the main thing that I learned, that I keep reiterating because it's probably one of the best parts of biomed, is learning how to think for yourself. Like you make sure that you know what you're doing, that you're not stuck. And if you are stuck, you figure out how to do it. You read online, you ask your friend. But the teacher is there as a last resort. They're still going to help you, but you don't rely on them as much. So it makes you more independent. And as going into college or into your later years, you're going to learn that the teacher is not always going to be there. So once you learn how to become independent in the way that you learn, the way that you think, the way that you reflect, it's going to make life a whole lot easier as a student. So yeah, that's what I have to say about biomed. It was a great class. I learned a lot from it. So good luck. And here I put a short slideshow of my favorite projects that we did in biomed.